Are you someone who loves risking their life for a quick adrenaline rush? If yes, then meet Dave Shaw, a 50-year-old Australian who spent his quality time living in Hong Kong. By day, he flew in the skies, taming both commercial and agricultural planes, and by night, he was a hardcore cave diver. To say the least, Dave was no ordinary guy. His spirit was hungry for new experiences until one day his adventure turned into a tragedy and ate him alive. What could possibly go wrong with a record-breaking cave dive, and how wrong could it get? Let's find out. Introduced to the world of diving by his son, Dave initially took baby steps and explored wreck sites around the Philippines. But Dave's adventurous thirst couldn't be fulfilled by this mainstream thrill. He was greedy for more, which ultimately led him to the risky sport of cave diving. At home, it was a common sight to see Dave constantly planning his next dive, and those who knew him called him calm, methodical, and careful. With these feathers in his hat, Dave dove regularly with no possible threats to his life. Over time, Dave became better, and that's what motivated him to take on more challenges, more specifically, a challenge that changed the course of his life. One particular dive destination that caught Dave's attention was Bosmansgat in South Africa, known as Bushman's Hole, a huge underwater cave with a tricky entrance made of small tunnels leading to a large cavern that goes down 280 meters or 918 feet. It's the kind of cave you'd want to dodge if you love your life, but Classic Dave was up for a challenge. Situated on top of a small mountain range, Bushman's Hole's altitude reached just under 1,524 meters, 5,000 feet. This makes diving there a bit more complicated because divers have to spend more time coming back to the surface to avoid getting sick from the pressure. Despite all these challenges, Dave was determined to give it a try. Now, before we jump into the details, it's important to highlight that Bushman's Hole has earned a reputation as a demanding dive site and has claimed a few lives over the years. One well-known case happened in 1994 to a guy named Jan Dreyer. He was just 20 years old and lost his life while helping a team get ready for a really deep dive. Sadly, Dion's accident happened when he was coming back up from about 49 meters, 160 feet below the surface. The team thought he might have passed out because of too much oxygen or too much CO2 in his system. Not more than a week after he died, Theo Dreyer did everything he could to find him. He even hired a small submarine to look in the deep cave, but all they found was Dion's helmet. For over a decade, Dion's body remained entombed within the dark depths of Bushman's Hole, which adds an eerie undertone to the already challenging environment of the cave. However, Dave wasn't scared of the cave's grim past. He loved diving in caves so much that he ignored the dangers. Going into Bushman's Hole, he knew he could be in trouble like others before him, but he went anyway, ready to take on whatever came his way. Now, to precisely understand the tragedy we're about to discuss, it's important to note that diving can be extremely dangerous. Diving is risky because of how gases act when you're deep underwater. You see, when you're under a lot of pressure, your body can soak up way more gases than it should, and that's not safe at all. This can make you nauseous and tamper with your brain's chemistry. You might start seeing things that aren't there, burst out laughing for no reason, or feel like something awful is about to happen. It's like a roller coaster of emotions that can end in a really bad way, even death. Even the oxygen you breathe can turn against you when you're diving really deep. Your blood can get filled up with too much oxygen, making it toxic and even hurting you instead of helping you. To battle this, divers usually bring along a mix of gases like nitrogen, oxygen, and helium, but the mix has to be just right depending on how deep they're going. Going wrong with the concentration levels or going too fast can make you feel wasted, like you've had way too many drinks. This state, in more scientific terminology, is called nitrogen narcosis, and it's really dangerous for anyone diving deep. That's why divers have to be super careful about their gas mix and how they descend. One wrong move and things can go downhill really fast. Coming back to our protagonist, Dave was always up for a challenge and decided to push his limits by attempting to break some diving world records at the tricky Bushman's Hole. The planning wasn't an easy task since no one knew the exact depth of the bottom. To compensate, Dave had to overfill his gas tanks, taking more than necessary. Not only this, the uncertainty about the shot line's length also troubled him, fearing he might slip off if it wasn't long enough. Now, for anyone who's wondering, in diving, a shot line or a weighted rope acts as a reference point and guide for divers in pitch black environments like caves where getting lost is a real risk. Despite these concerns, Dave went on his dive, facing his first challenge immediately. At this point, carrying 4 bailout tanks with a high helium content made him more buoyant than planned, slowing his descent, which is not a good thing to begin with. I'm sure that by now you know time underwater is very crucial as breathable air is limited, and the deeper you go, the faster the air runs out due to compression. To overcome this challenge, Dave adjusted his descent rate, but he had to be careful because going too fast could make it hard to see. Even though it was tough, Dave made it to the bottom and broke a bunch of records for diving really deep with special equipment. He broke the record for the deepest depth on a rebreather, deepest cave depth on a rebreather, altitude depth on a rebreather, and setting a record for running a line at greater depths. But then, when Dave turned on his light, he saw something scary, a person's shape. When he got closer, he realized it was Dion Dreyer, the 20-year-old diver who had died there 10 years ago. Dave tried to lift the body, but it was hard because the old gear was stuck in the mud. Dave was breathing hard and using up his air quickly. In an instant, he knew he didn't have much air left to try to bring Dreyer's body up, so he tied a line to it and started going up. On the way up, Shaw ran into his friend Don, who was diving down to get some tanks they left behind, and there he wrote him a short message on a diving board that read, 270 meters, 885 feet, found body. After David emerged from the cave, he couldn't help but burst with excitement as he shared his incredible discovery with everyone. They had stumbled upon the remains of Dion Dreyer, missing for a decade. Despite David's impressive deep breathing skills during the dive, what really thrilled him was this unexpected find. The group decided that David should be the one to break the news to Theo Dreyer, Dion's father. In their conversation, David assured Theo that he would retrieve the body for a proper burial, offering the family some much-needed closure. With that promise made, David headed home to start planning the recovery dive. When David gathered his team to discuss the dive logistics, they already had some key details on hand, making planning a breeze. They knew exactly where the body was, how it was secured, and the depth they needed to reach. A solid start, right? Ever observant, David had also noticed that the body was just a skeleton arranged artistically with no regulator in sight. It eerily floated in place, but this lack of air made it negatively buoyant, making it more predictable and easier to handle underwater. Going into technical details, Dave decided to wear a helmet camera for the dive. Since there were no GoPro options available, they went for a small low-light performance camera and custom-made helmet housing. Though a bit bulky, it served its purpose well. Now, because they were diving so deep, they couldn't come up right away. Instead, they had to slowly rise, taking breaks to avoid getting sick from the pressure. If you think of it this way, it was like a diving relay, with David passing info to Don and then going back down until everyone was safe on the surface. Dave also gathered the team to discuss a serious matter: what to do if someone didn't make it back. He emphasized that each person's safety was important. If something went wrong, they were to prioritize themselves over him. It was a clear message: better for one person to die than two. Safety first always. On the 8th of January 2005, Dave Shaw and his team finally set out for Bushman's Hole in South Africa. Their mission was simple: retrieve a body from the depths of a cave. But the challenges they faced were anything but easy. Dave felt confident in their preparations. Every detail had been meticulously planned and checked, but as they descended into the cold abyss of the cave, they soon realized that things don't always go as planned underwater. Navigating through the dark cave, Dave followed the guidelines he had previously set to locate the body. In the pitch-black darkness, visibility was limited to just a few feet around the guidelines. Upon reaching the bottom of the cave, Dave found the body stuck in silt. Despite his efforts, he couldn't move it without risking running out of air. At first, Dave thought it was a decomposed body, and that's how they had planned everything. But to his surprise, the body was only partially decomposed, preserved by the wetsuit it was wearing. The part in the silt, protected by a wetsuit, had turned into adipocere, a waxy substance, making it buoyant. When Dave finally dislodged the body, it began to float and spin unpredictably. To add to the chaos, it got entangled in Dave's equipment, specifically his battery-powered torch. The curse had already struck him. Dave, trying not to panic, realized he couldn't use the usual tactic of wrapping the torch wire around his neck to avoid entanglement. The height of his helmet and camera also stopped him from reaching over and safely securing the wire. As a result, the freely floating wire got caught in Dion's body. This is it. This is what happens in the dark. Something unplanned happens and takes you away. Panicking, Dave struggled to free himself from the entangled mess, but at such depths, his rising breathing rate and distress sealed his fate. Unable to control his CO2 intake, he lost consciousness and never resurfaced. Meanwhile, Don, the first diver Dave was supposed to meet on his way back, waited in vain. Following protocol, he went to the surface, knowing that waiting could only lead to more tragedy. When Don met the next diver, he delivered the grim news. Dave was not coming back. What started as a mission to bring closure to a grieving family turned into a tragic lesson in the dangers of deep water diving. That's it for today. Meet you in the next one, and until then, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more.